No, it's not. Is it pushing an agenda? Well, not any more than the series already has been. I keep seeing this issue of stuff going woke crop up in fandoms, but it seems to be a big topic in a lot of the Godzilla fan pages I've seen more recently. People seem to think that Godzilla having pink dorsal plates, or Monarch Legacy of Monsters, including a gay character, is an example of Legendary Pictures and the MonsterVerse franchise as a whole going woke or pushing a message. And I'm here to tell you that's dumb, with a capital D. What's up, everyone? I'm your friendly neighborhood Paradox, and I'm going to keep this video kind of brief because I feel like this is not really a hard concept to understand, so forgive me if I'm not going as in-depth as some of you may like, but the Godzilla franchise is no stranger to pushing a message. Let me expand on this. Let's rewind all the way back to the end of the Second World War. The Allies had just won, big bad Germany just got their asses handed to them, and the fighting stopped. Well, almost. Japan had decided not to surrender just yet, and it wasn't until the dropping of the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and then 3 days later the dropping of a second and final atomic bomb on Nagasaki on the 9th, that Japan finally surrendered, effectively ending the war. And make no mistake, it was absolutely devastating. The bombs not only killed around 200,000 people, most of which were just civilians, but even those that survived the initial bombings either died from exposure to so much radiation from the fallout, or developed different kinds of radiation sickness and lived in much pain for the remainder of their lives. Now, to say the bombings were right or wrong is not the reason for this history lesson. What I want to stress here is that Japan, being devastated by all the destruction and the loss of the war, go on to have huge ripple effects that are felt in Japan to this very day. A big change for Japan after the war, besides a brand new government structure, was how America had influence over the kind of media Japan produced. Since the Allies had been on the winning side of the war, they introduced many censorship restrictions over Japanese films, and were adamant that criticism directed towards the Allies' said actions in the war, such as the use of atomic weaponry, was forbidden. Now, flash forward a few years to March 1954, where a Japanese fishing boat known as, well, I'm not going to try to pronounce that as I don't want to butcher it, but it translates to Lucky Dragon number 5. An ironic name, considering that this fishing boat had unknowingly drifted into an area where the US government was testing a thermonuclear weapon at Castle Bravo, a military site off a place known as the Bikini Atoll. This was an area that was good for fishing, which the crew of the Lucky Dragon were doing, when suddenly a bomb that was 1,000 times that of the bombs dropped on Japan almost a decade earlier exploded just a few miles away. Radioactive ash rained down from the sky and covered the ship and the crew, and all the members of the Lucky Dragon contracted acute radiation syndrome, the symptoms which include nausea, headaches, burns, pain in the eyes, and bleeding from the gums. And tragically, several members of the Lucky Dragon would also lose their lives due to this. Naturally, there was a public outcry from this, as Japan as a nation still held a lot of trauma from the bombings years prior, being that this was an incident so close to home and reminding people of the dangers of nuclear weaponry. Many citizens felt unsafe, and as an unfortunate result of the censorship laws that had been put in place by the US, media outlets weren't really allowed to talk about the bombings or the Lucky Dragon incident. One studio, however, figured out a clever way to fix this issue. Instead of outright talking about the bombs and US nuclear testing, Toho Studios decided to produce a film called Gojira, where the titular creature became a physical representation of the hubris of atomic weaponry. So, in the film, we follow a group of characters living in post-war Japan that must contend with the awakening of a creature mutated by atomic radiation, Gojira, which would later become widely known as Godzilla. Wherever the beast goes, he brings death and destruction, and he breathes literal radioactive fire. He leaves behind radiation that eventually kills or sickens anyone that may have survived his initial attack. And so for all intents and purposes, Godzilla is a walking atomic bomb, stopped only by the creation of another destructive weapon that has its inventor take his own life out of fear that, Like the atomic bomb, it would only go on to create more devastation if it fell into the wrong hands. And while the characters do defeat Godzilla with this scientist sacrifice, one of the characters laments that another Godzilla may rise if atomic testing continues. Now, being that the film doesn't directly criticize the US, mostly just atomic testing, the film was able to pass the censorship laws and was released in Japan a mere 8 months after the Lucky Dragon number 5 incident, which was still very fresh in the minds of Japanese people. And while it even got an American release overseas, that version of the film would be heavily edited with a new American actor spliced into scenes with the original Japanese cast, and it would downplay most of the anti-nuclear message of the original film. So why did I tell you all of this? Well, I think it's pretty obvious from everything that I've stated that the original Godzilla film had a very strong message it was trying to push, one that wasn't exactly popular outside of its home country. And while many Godzilla films from this era would abandon this strong of a message, there was still a lot of stuff the series did from time to time that was obviously a message that it was trying to push on its audience, and therefore pushing messages isn't something that is out of the ordinary for the franchise as a whole. So, is Legendary Pictures' MonsterVerse pushing a message about the gay agenda? Is it going woke, as the boomers like to say? Well, first let's look at the term woke and what that means. The term woke is being used a lot on social media these days, mainly by people who don't really understand what it means. The definition given by Wikipedia is as follows. Woke is an adjective derived from African American vernacular English meaning alert to racial prejudice and discrimination. Beginning in the 2010s, it came to encompass a broader awareness of social inequalities such as racial injustice, sexism, and denial of LGBT rights. Now, by that definition alone, any property where a gay character is just, existing is not an example of something going woke. Godzilla having... Oh, sorry, let me set you down, buddy. Godzilla having pink spines is not an example of this, and this does not apply to Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Alright, yes, I know, I look different. I filmed this over like 2 days, and I was falling asleep during that last part because it was late at night. Whatever, get over it. Anyways, so, one of the main characters of Monarch Legacy of Monsters, specifically Kate Randa, is revealed to be gay in episode 5, but they don't draw too much attention to it. It's literally just a part of the character. Her being gay is more in the background because the coming tension of Godzilla arriving in San Francisco, as well as the character's regrets towards her loved ones, is the main focus during these scenes. This isn't going woke, and that's just not an issue Monarch Legacy of Monsters has. If anything, its issues lie more with most of the issues the MonsterVerse already has. Boring characters. Okay, maybe that's not super fair to Kurt and Wyatt Russell, but going further than that, Kate Randa being gay isn't something that's, in the foreground of her character. Finding her father and figuring out what's going on with Monarch is, and as of writing right now, with all episodes out, there is literally only 2 minutes and 54 seconds of anything gay being on screen. 2 minutes and 54 seconds. I timed it. Okay, fine. Can hear you yelling at me in the comments already, so I'll give you one more definition and then we'll see if my argument still holds. Okay, so the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines woke as follows. Woke, aware of and attentive to important societal facts and issues, especially of racial and social justice, and often used in contexts that suggest someone's expressed beliefs about such matters are not backed with genuine concern or action. Again, if we just look at what's been shown in Monarch Legacy of Monsters, the argument for Monarch being woke still isn't there. Yes, By showing gay people exist in that 2-minute time span and showing that Monarch Legacy of Monsters is aware of societal fact. Gay people exist. But if you just watch the scene, it's clear that it's not actively attentive. Again, what's front and center during these scenes is Godzilla's incoming arrival, but also Kate's cheating on a loved one, which, much like anything involving her dad in this series, panders more towards adultery than anything. So, if Monarch Legacy of Monsters isn't woke, is it pandering? Well, what exactly is pandering? Because I believe there's a big difference between representation and straight up pandering. So, what exactly is pandering? Well, dictionary.com defines pandering as follows: catering to or profiting from the weaknesses, vices, or unreasonable desires of others. And I'm just going to say this now: someone just existing and being gay isn't pandering. It is not a vice, it is not a weakness, and it is not unreasonable to seek the love of another person, regardless of how they identify. Unless you're Drake. And I've seen so many people shit-talking Monarch Legacy of Monsters because of this. If you truly believe being gay falls under any of those terms, you're just a bigot. Woo! Oh, fuck, shit. Alright, yes, I'll throw another definition for pandering up there. Here's again from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Pandered. Pandering. Intransitive verb. To act as a pander, especially to provide gratification for others' desires. So, under that definition, is Monarch Legacy of Monsters pandering? Well, a little bit, yeah. I mean, is it gay pandering? Maybe, but, also by that definition, though, it not only panders to the gay crowd, but, adultery, straight people who like to watch giant monsters. There's also just way more scenes to satisfy the straight crowd than the gay crowd here, so that's not a good argument for gay pandering either. If you want an actual example of gay pandering under this definition, just look at J.K. I'm a turf piece of shit Rowling with her addition of making Dumbledore gay after her book series was finished. This was, a last-minute addition, like most of her established lore written after the books, and nowhere in this series is this character trait ever explored, and it is an example of her trying to pander to a wider audience and make her series just more inclusive than it initially was. Based on what's in this show, though, this is just Monarch being inclusive. So, to everyone complaining about this, are you guys fucking babies? Going woke? Gay pandering? There is so much more straight romance and adultery in this show. Half the human drama is these whack-ass straight people in their relationships. Why aren't y'all more pissed about that? If you wouldn't consider showing footage of a straight relationship on screen as not straight pandering, then you also shouldn't consider the 2 minutes and 54 seconds that a gay couple is being shown on screen. Let me remind you, this is a series about a giant nuclear lizard, a big-ass monkey with a super-powered axe, and a giant mecha lizard that gets turned evil because it's hooked up to the brain of a giant 3-headed space dragon. But gay people existing is where you draw the line? I only have one more question since we are talking about things, being woke and everyone losing their mind every time a gay character is shown on screen. Can you give me examples of where being gay is purely the main focus of the character? Because based off what everyone's saying, every time a character is shown where just one aspect of themselves is gay, I can't help but wonder if this same logic applies to other characters. Like, oh man, James Bond, he's a super cool spy and everything, but Jesus Christ, can he stop sleeping with women? We get it. You're straight. You like to fuck women. Get back to the spy stuff. Or, man, Han Solo, he's so cool, but, does he have to kiss Leia? We get it. You're straight. I can't believe they made that the entirety of his character. Do you hear how stupid that sounds? Basically, what I'm saying is there is a difference between inclusiveness and something going woke or pandering. And the Godzilla franchise being inclusive is not it going woke or pandering, but even if it was, it would be okay. This is a long-standing franchise that, for the most part, has always tried to push the message for, people who aren't really allowed to talk about their problems in society. And honestly, I'm pretty sure most of the people complaining don't even like the MonsterVerse as a whole, which, it's fine if you don't. You have 50 plus years and 30 plus movies to, work with if the MonsterVerse isn't doing it for you. Luckily, however you feel about the MonsterVerse, the Godzilla franchise is still going strong. Godzilla Minus One is out. It crossed 100 million at the box office. There's, a DC crossover going on right now. We just had a live-action Godzilla TV show, and Godzilla X Kong comes out in a few months. We as kaiju fans are eating, but some people would rather starve themselves because they just can't sit at the dinner table with their fellow man. Well, that's pretty much all I had to say. If you agree or disagree with me, just please let me know in the comments. Let's try to have a civil conversation, though. And again, this was like my first time making a video like this. I'm sorry if it was really rough. I'm sure as I continue this, I'll get better in the future, and I do want to continue this. So if you want to support me, hit like, subscribe, all that nonsense. Stuff I'd like to talk about is I'd love to discuss, Godzilla Minus One, its impact on, cinema right now. I'd love to talk about Godzilla and Kong when it comes out. Now that Monarch has dropped, I'd also like to talk about that. But I'd also like to talk about other things, like the new Studio Ghibli movie, The Boy and the Heron. But if you have any suggestions, please let me know. And, well, I guess on that note, bye, lovelies.